"We got married yesterday," she said, with a softness that didn't match the wrecking ball behind her words. I remember the box in my hands, a small, dark velvet one, tight in my fist. Inside was my father's watch, the one he gave me the day I got married, the one I meant to give to my son. On his wedding day, I'd stood there in a neatly pressed suit, stupidly proud, heart quietly hoping this was the moment he'd finally let me in again. But instead of champagne glasses and welcome hugs, there was only a door half open, barely, and her eyes. God, her eyes were red. "I'm sorry," she said, but sorry wasn't the word I needed. I needed an answer, and what I got was silence. Before I tell you what happened next, please subscribe and comment what time it is where you are, because the next part, well, it taught me that real heartbreak sounds a lot like a door closing. It started like a good day. I got up early, shaved, and laid my suit out on the bed. Navy blue, the same tie I wore to my best friend's wedding, the one I always told my boy I'd wear at his. My dress shoes were still shined from church last Sunday, so I just wiped off a little dust. I gave the watch a final polish, my father's watch, and placed it in a velvet box. It still ticked, faint and steady. Comforting. I thought maybe it'd mean something to him, the way it meant something to me. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the day he'd let me in again. He'd been with Emily for years. Sweet girl, always respectful when I saw her, which was barely. I didn't know much about their relationship, but I figured, eventually, I'd get that call. "Dad, we're getting married." And today felt like that day. I didn't get an invite. No call, no message. But I got a text from my brother 2 nights ago, "Big day coming up." That was it. Vague enough to be annoying, kind enough to be hopeful. So I figured maybe my son wanted to surprise me. Maybe he remembered that I still wanted to be a part of his life. When I reached the apartment, something felt quiet, too quiet. No music, no signs of family, no balloons or banners. I double-checked the address, then just stood there, staring at the door for too long, and then it opened. Emily stood in the frame, barefoot, her sweater sleeves pulled to her palms like she was cold. Her makeup was light, her hair a little tangled like sleep hadn't come easy. She blinked. Her face changed when she saw me, a mix of surprise and guilt. And then she whispered it like a secret she wished she didn't have to tell. "We got married yesterday." My mind didn't catch the words at first. They sort of hovered midair, like I expected a punchline afterward. But nothing came. Her hands fiddled at the edges of her cardigan. He thought it would be easier this way. I looked down at the gift. I swear I could hear the tick of that old watch in that little box. Steady, oblivious, unlike everything else. "Yesterday," I finally said. The words scraped my throat. "So, that's it." She stepped back a little, guilt in her eyes. "I'm sorry, he didn't want to hurt you." I don't remember what I said next. Something like congratulations. Something pathetic like that. I held out the box. She hesitated before taking it, like it weighed more than it looked, like she knew. It wasn't just a gift. Then I turned and walked back to my car. I remember the sound of the door closing behind me. It wasn't a slam. It was soft, careful, but it echoed in me like thunder in the car. I didn't drive away right away. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. I stared at the rearview mirror, half hoping he'd come running out. Tell me it was all a huge misunderstanding, but the door didn't open again. Nobody came. I just watched the apartment building and realized, the world had moved forward, and I hadn't even been asked to walk. They say divorce isn't the end of a family, just a shift, a rearranging of rooms in the same house. But they don't really talk about what happens to the quiet parts, the tension that builds without ever exploding. The spaces between Thursday dinners and birthdays that got replaced with maybe next time. That's where everything started for me, after my ex-wife and I split. My son was 13, old enough to look me in the eye while we packed up half his clothes into a duffel bag. He chose to live with her. I could lie and pretend we decided that together, but kids don't choose with logic. They choose what feels easier, safer. He chose her. I told myself it was temporary. Told myself he'd miss me. But weeks turned into months, and the calls? They slowed to a drip. I kept trying. Texts, short ones. Proud of you. How's school? No replies. Or worse, the blue ticks and nothing else. I'd drive an hour for his basketball game. He'd barely wave. I'd take him out for lunch. He'd stare at his phone like I wasn't there, and over time, I started feeling like a stranger to my own son. At first, I told myself it was just teenage stuff, just a phase. But deep down, I knew better. I could see it in the small things. How he'd avoid meeting my eyes. How his shoulders tensed when I asked about school. How he'd glance at the time like he was always somewhere else in his head. When he started seeing Emily, I didn't even know her name at first. I remember the first time I met her, Christmas. Brief, polite. She shook my hand like we were at a job interview, and my son sat beside her on the couch like they were at opposite ends of a contract. They were both trying not to break. They left early. That second time I saw her was after his graduation. I offered to take them both out to dinner. They smiled, said they were tired. They'd grab fast food instead, and the excuses kept multiplying after that, like cracks in drywall. Small at first, then gaping. The more I reached out, the more I felt like I was intruding. I started to wonder who was reinforcing that wall, and I blamed his mother. I know it's ugly to say, but in my mind, she was always too good at pretending, always knew how to play the martyr. I'd hear it in the subtext, her voice when our son was on speaker, the way she'd sigh heavily and say things like, "Oh, don't feel bad, sweetheart. I'm used to being second to his work too." Or, "I'm just glad I never missed your piano recital." Like layering guilt in polite packaging, she'd smile while undermining me, made bitterness look like motherly wisdom. Sometimes I'd pick up our son for a weekend, and she'd stand by the window, always watching, like I was stealing something that belonged to her, instead of simply being a father trying to stay connected. But blaming her only took me so far, because one night, I looked in the mirror and saw the other half of the truth. It wasn't just her. There were nights I missed dinner at home for some meeting that could have been an email. Days I chose silence instead of asking hard questions. Mornings when I barked at my son for spilling his cereal and never apologized. I was hard to reach, hard to love, probably. I took pride in being strong, when all he probably needed was soft. I remember one night I'd asked him to do the dishes. A storm had knocked out the power, and we were both cranky. He said something smart under his breath, nothing big, and I snapped, shouted, real loud, like unnecessary loud. He just stood there, quiet, soap dripping from his hands, looking at me not with anger, but with disappointment. I never said sorry for that night, and I should have. The thing is, you don't always know which memories leave bruises. And by the time you're ready to talk about them, the other person might already have the scar. It was past midnight. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling like answers were hidden in the paint. I hadn't heard from him in days since showing up to find out. I'd missed his entire wedding. No call, no explanation, just ... silence. So I grabbed my laptop, Google search bar open, hands hovering, and then I typed his name, plus the word wedding. What popped up? Flipped my stomach. Photos. So many of them. There they were, smiling, on the beach. Soft gold light hit their faces just right. Emily in a delicate lace dress. My son in khakis and a linen shirt, barefoot, holding her hand like he'd waited his whole life for this exact moment, and standing just behind them, my ex-wife, laughing in one shot, holding tears in another. Front row, right next to Emily's parents. There wasn't a single sign I had even existed. I clicked through all 47 pictures. Not one included an empty chair for me. Some betrayals are loud. A door slammed, a shouting match, a goodbye with spit in the words. But others, they come in photos, frozen smiles, dancing cousins. A mother of a groom's speech you never heard. Because you were never there, the wedding album pulled me deeper than I meant to go. Each click, another punch to the gut. The way he looked at her, I hadn't seen that in years. That unfiltered joy, that soft-eyed wonder I remember from when he was little, holding frogs in his palms like living treasure. Now here he was, barefoot on a beach beside a woman he clearly loved. surrounded by people who cheered for him. And I wasn't one of them. I wanted to hate them. I wanted to be angry at her, at him, at whoever took that day and made sure my name never made it past the recycled invitation list. But I couldn't hate anyone. I just felt hollow. I wandered into the kitchen. 3:17 a.m., the kind of night silence that buzzes in your ears. The leftover coffee pot from earlier still sat half full. I poured some and took a sip. Cold, bitter, fitting. I picked up my phone, then put it down. Then picked it up again. My fingers hovered over his number like it might bite me. Don't call. Not now. You'll just make it worse. But something inside makes a mix of fire and aches. Damn it. You've been silent long enough. So, I called. He picked up after 2 rings. The kind of pause that feels like someone breathing through their teeth before speaking. Him. ... Hey me. Hey. Silence. I could hear the hum of traffic back on his end. Maybe a distant horn. Life happening elsewhere. Me? I saw the pictures. Him flatly. Yeah. I waited for him to say sorry, or I was going to call, or we meant to tell you anything. Nothing. Me? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did I do something? Something so wrong that you didn't even want me there? It came out quieter than I meant. A whisper into the war. He didn't answer right away. Then, his voice low, drier than before, but calm. Him. It's not just one thing, Dad. You think everything is always about one moment, but it's you never listening. You always... He took a breath, ... always made it about you. That one hit deeper than I expected. All the wind left my lungs to me. Son, him, like now. You're hurt. You're angry. But did you ask how I felt growing up? I swallowed hard, because the truth was, I hadn't him. Do you remember my graduation? I looked for you in the crowd for 30 minutes. You came in after the speeches. Or when Mom had surgery and you sent flowers, then went to work. And every time I brought up Emily during dinner, you'd change the subject or talk about your promotion or your project or your smaller voice. You wasn't yelling. That's what made it worse. He said it all. Like facts, like receipts that had been quietly building over the years. I didn't know what to say, 'cause everything I wanted to defend didn't sound defensible anymore. I messed up, I finally said. I know. I didn't know how deep the cracks went. He let out a laugh. Not cruel, just exhausted. You never wanted to see the cracks, Dad. That's the problem. We sat in silence. The kind that 2 men sit in when one of them is finally old enough to see the other fully. Scars and all. Me clearing throat. You could have told me. I would have come. I was ready. Him. I wasn't. That one stung. I wasn't ready for the weight of those 3 words. I wasn't ready to let you in on something that actually made me happy. When the call ended, neither of us said goodbye. Just silence and a click. I stared at the phone like it might turn into a mirror and tell me who I really was. Who I used to be. Hell, who I still am. I went to the living room and sat in the old recliner. The one he used to fall asleep in after school, watching cartoons with his mouth open, drool on the pillow. All these memories. And yet somehow, I'd become a ghost in his. There's a kind of anger that burns quicks, parks, snaps, and fizzles. And then there's the kind that seeps deep into your bones, that walks with you, sleeps under your skin. That's the one I met after that phone call. I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room like it owed me something. Pulled open drawers, closed them harder than I needed to. I was looking for something, maybe proof I hadn't failed as badly as I was starting to believe. My breath short, shoulders tight. I hadn't shouted at him during the call. I'd kept my voice calm, maybe too calm, but now all that restraint was turning inward, festering. Always made it about me. He said, if only he knew. The nights I lay awake, worrying if he'd come home from school, okay. The time he broke his arm, and I spent every lunch break sitting by his hospital bed, pretending to read while just watching him breathe. The years I stayed in a marriage that was long dead, just so he could have 2 parents in the same home. And still I ended up the villain in this story. I slammed my hand on the kitchen counter, not proud of it. Ceramic cracked underneath. A plate I hadn't used in years. Something from the registry. I yelled not words, just noise into the emptiness of the house. There was no one to hear it anyway. A moment later, I found myself in my office. Dim light, papers everywhere, that damn watch box still sitting where I'd laid it days earlier. Unopened, I sat down, hard, opened a drawer, pulled out a pen, and I started writing. The letter wasn't for anyone at first. It was just so I wouldn't lose my mind. Paragraph after paragraph. Memories spilled out of me like a dam breaking. The day he was born. The first time he called me Dad, not Dodd, but Dad. Solid, real, holding his fevered head while his little chest rose and fell too fast. The Halloween he didn't win the costume contest. And he cried in the back seat the whole drive home because he thought maybe he just wasn't funny enough. I wrote about the time he got suspended for punching a kid who'd laughed at another boy with a speech disability. And how proud I was, quietly, though I never told him that about the fights we had. The ones that shouldn't have happened. About the silences that shouldn't have lasted. I wrote for hours. The paper soaked up my guilt like cotton. No lies. No lies. No justifications, just raw memories. And regret. At the end, I wrote, I know I hurt you in ways I never intended, but I loved you in ways I never learned how to show. You didn't take anything from me. I gave it badly. I folded the letter carefully. I didn't seal it. I just placed it inside the box with the watch. 3 days passed. I didn't send anything, didn't text, didn't eat much. Then one afternoon, I went to pick up some groceries. Just milk and coffee. Something to feel normal and life being life. That's where I saw her, Emily. She was standing in the frozen foods aisle, holding a bag of peas like it was the last thing on earth. She froze when she saw me. Half step backward. Smile, unsure. Like her instincts didn't know what was safe. I nodded. Hey, she said it back. Quietly, we stood like that for a second. Strangers with too much in common. Then I spoke. How is he? She hesitated. He's okay? Quiet. Processing. I nodded. It made sense. I wasn't trying to. I know. Her voice was soft. He's just scared of reopening things that hurt. Another pause. The air buzzed with cold and emotion, and then she said, the one sentence that cracked me open all over again. He wanted to invite you. What he talked about it. I asked him to. He told me she looked down, he didn't think you'd come. I swear the hum of the freezers stopped for a second. She wasn't being cruel. She was just telling the truth. He thought you'd find a reason not to. Or worse, come out of duty and make it about disappointment. I felt like I'd been hit twice, once softly. Then again, in slow motion. It wasn't hate that kept me out. It was fear. He didn't shut the door on me to punish. He shut it because he didn't think I'd open my arms when it mattered. Back in the car, I put the groceries in the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel in silence. My eyes burned. My jaw clenched so tightly it pulsed behind my ears. I wasn't rejected. I was avoided, 'cause somewhere along the road, I stopped being his safe place. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the folded letter, and finally, for the first time in a long time, knew exactly what to do with it. There are things I've thrown away in a fit of stubbornness. Letters, apologies, gifts I bought and never gave. But that letter, the one I wrote after screaming into an empty house, that one sat on my desk for 4 days, folded, untouched, like it was daring me to either send it or throw it into the fire like the rest of my pride. Each morning, I told myself, maybe tomorrow. Each night, I'd stare at it with my hand half hovering over the envelope. My pride told me it was too late. My pain told me it wouldn't matter. But love, that small, stubborn part of me that still saw his 6-year-old face asking for one more bedtime story, said, send it. I didn't write a cover note. No dramatic lead-up. Just sealed the letter, placed it gently in the box with the watch, and drove it to the post office. Dropped it through the silver slot, listened as it hit the bin inside with a quiet, echoing thunk. And then, nothing. The world went on. A week passed, no call, no text, no knock. I didn't expect fireworks. Healing doesn't come with a marching band, but I watched the street from my window more than I'd care to admit, pretending I was just looking at the maple tree, the maple that used to turn bright red in the fall when he was little, the one we used to rake leaves under and jump in the piles even when he got too old to admit he liked it. Then, one evening, late, just before the porch light faded to timer-controlled darkness, I saw headlights cut across the yard, a blue car parked by the curb. He stepped out alone. He looked the same, and not at all older, tired, but calm. I opened the door before he knocked me. Hey, him, hey. Just that. He looked at the porch like it was foreign territory. Come on in, I said. You don't have to take your shoes off unless you want to believe I kept the floors clean since you left. He gave the faintest smile, a haunted one, but still. We sat in the living room, the old chessboard between us. We didn't touch it. That board had dust in the corners now. I hadn't played since the last time I let him win. Maybe he didn't know I ever let him. Maybe that didn't matter anymore. I read the letter, he said. God. Just hearing him say that almost knocked the breath out of me. I looked at my hands in my lap. They were shaking slightly, like they remembered holding baby fingers that no longer needed me. Him. I didn't know how to respond. I still don't. Me? That's okay. I wasn't asking you to fix anything, just to know. He nodded. Silence again, but this time not angry, just uncertain. Him. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Dad. I just didn't know if having you there would open old wounds again. I thought you left me on purpose. Him quietly. I kinda did. He swallowed hard. Looked at the carpet like it would explain him better than words could. It wasn't out of hate. I was waiting for something from you that never came. I didn't ask what, because part of me already knew. A softer tone. A real apology. Dinner where I only talked about him, not work. He kept speaking. You and Mom. When you split, I felt like I had to pick a side. I didn't want to. But you made it feel like not picking you meant losing you completely. I blinked, letting it sink in. Then years passed, and it was just easier not to try. Easier to keep things cordial, gray zone. Close enough not to hurt. Far enough not to risk it. He looked up at me. I wasn't protecting Mom. I was protecting myself. I listened more than I spoke. Sometimes we think what our kids need is advice or answers. Turns out, they mostly need ears. Stillness at some point, I'm not sure when. I stood up, walked to the mantel, picked up the box, walked back, sat down again, placed it on the coffee table between us. Open it. He did, lifted the lid, stared at the watch. Its face caught the lamplight sideways, soft and golden, aged but ticking all the same. It was my father's, I said. I wore it the day I married your mother. I always believed it was meant to pass from father to son. On his wedding day, he looked at me, eyes rimmed red, but dry. I didn't get to give it to you then, and I'm not asking you to wear it out of guilt or tradition or burden. I'm giving it to you now, because I still believe in us. His chin trembled, but he didn't cry. He stood, walked over, and sat not on the other couch this time, but next to me, shoulders barely brushing. He held the watch, didn't say a word, didn't need to. They say reconciliation is loud, hugs in airports, tears falling in living rooms. Big speeches filled with regret and I'm sorries. But I've learned something different. Forgiveness, real healing. It's subtle, quiet, not yelled over a dinner table, but whispered through a second chance. It's been a few weeks since that night on my couch. He left with the watch still in the box. Didn't wear it. Didn't hug me goodbye. But when he stepped off my porch, he didn't close the door hard this time. He let it rest open behind him. Since then, it's been slow. A text here and there. One asked if I remembered the name of that fishing spot we used to go to. The one with a rocky shoreline and the spot that always had bass hiding under the driftwood. I told him the name. Then sent a photo I still had of the two of us, ankle deep in the water. Him holding a fish half his size and grinning like he'd won the lottery. He didn't reply. Not to that one. But a few days later, I got a message from Emily. Just a picture, her and my son, standing together on the beach where they'd said their vows. This time, they weren't posed. He was laughing. Genuinely, she had her hand on her stomach. Below the picture was a single line. "We thought you should know first." Today, I'm walking a path I haven't been on in years. It's an old dirt trail near our first house. It winds through trees that let light fall in quiet flakes, like confetti made of gold. When he was little, we used to walk this trail every Sunday. He'd pick up sticks, swat at leaves, ask me silly questions like whether trees could grow upside down. I always said no. Now I wonder how many other answers I gave too fast. With more certainty than understanding, I'm speaking to you now. To whoever may be watching this, not as a victim, not even really as a father, just as a man who made mistakes, big ones, silent ones, ones I didn't know were hurting my son until they already had. Sometimes we're so sure we're the ones who got wrong that we never think to ask ourselves, but what pain did I cause in my silence? What walls did I build waiting to be broken down from the other side? Healing doesn't come all at once. It can't, but it starts when someone decides to stop waiting for the other person to go first. No, I haven't been invited to Sunday dinners yet. There's no frame on my mantle with a wedding photo that includes me we still tread lightly on. Certain topics avoid certain years in our memories. But a week ago, he called, not to apologize, not to argue, just to talk about the weather, the news, a new sandwich shop he tried, and last night, Emily sent another photo. This time, the ultrasound was clearer. There was a heartbeat inside the shadows. My grandchild. I don't know what the future holds. I've walked away from too many forevers to believe in certainty. But I do know this. The family I thought I lost, might still be out there, not waiting for me to beg my way in. Just hoping I show up quietly, without the blame, without the should-haves, just as a man, willing to love again, willing to listen. Finally, if this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share it with someone you've drifted from, a parent, a child, a friend, because sometimes all it takes is one honest message, one quiet gesture, to remind someone you still care. And you're still here. We think time will fix things for us, but time only makes silence louder. Healing, starts with courage, with confession, with love that's stronger than pride. So before you click away, do me one favor, like this video, subscribe if these stories speak to you, and comment below with one person you thought of while you listened. Doesn't matter if it's someone you've forgiven or someone who still doesn't know they hurt you. Sometimes, writing their name is the first step toward healing what's still possible. And if no one's told you lately, you're not alone. You still matter, and it's never too late to come back.